So this is my Raditz hand controlled deck. So 1 copy of the leader, Raditz, 4 copies of Raditz Saint Assistant, 4 Raditz Arrival of the Invader, 4 Broly Demonic Origins, 4 Android 15, 4 Vegeta Cruel, 4 Dark Temptation Toa, 4 Bodyguard Logic, 4 Further Destruction Champa, 4 E Supreme Kais, 4 Self-Absorption, 4 Hidden Power of the Saiyans, 4 Shocking Death Ball, and 2 Awakened Warrior Bardock. You know, my staple stuff. So, obviously a lot of the red stuff like Logic, Champa, E Supreme Kai, obviously that's my, and Awakened Warrior Bardock, staple stuff. So those are my staples, and then of course, you know, Sparking Negate's always good. Counterplay card that could potentially make your opponent discard 2 cards. You want them to discard 2 cards because, you know, it helps with the strategy. But if they don't discard 2 cards from their hands when you play this, in order to protect the battle card they just played, that shows that what's in their hand is way more important than that battle card they're playing. If they gladly give up 2 cards from their hand in order to play that battle card, then you know that battle card is valuable. That's 1. And 2, their hand it consists of some bad cards and some good cards. So you can start, you know, doing the math there and trying to figure out how many good cards they have in their hand, how many bad cards in hand, and go from there. The whole idea of this is just knowledge of the hand, of your opponent's hand. That's why it's hand control and not hand destruction, because you're not trying to just take every card out of your opponent's hand. If you manage to do that, that's great. But the idea is to use effects that force your opponent to decide if they're going to get rid of cards from the hand or not, or not. You know, in this card scenario, or cards that force them to have to get rid of cards, like Self-Absorption. You play it, your opponent has to choose the cards from the hand. Based off of what they choose, that's the important thing. If they quickly discard cards from the hand, then the cards they got rid of obviously weren't important, they didn't matter, and they might have some decent cards in hand, or their whole hand is pretty trash, so they had no problem just getting rid of 2 random cards because it was just trash for them, because they don't care, their hand's not that good. But if they take their time and they're hesitant and they take a while to decide what to discard, then you know they have a really good hand and they're trying to keep that good hand. So once this resolves, then of course you go in with the attack with the leader. That's another card they'll lose. If you overwhelm and bring out Dark Temptation Toa, that's another card they'll lose. So if you're paying attention to every time they're discarding, every time they're hesitating to discard, the longer it takes for them to discard a card, the more likely you can start thinking what they're thinking. You know, you can start getting in their head and start figuring out, like, all right, they're taking long to decide what to discard. That must mean their hand is pretty good, so they're trying to decide which half of their hand is better than the other half. They're trying to figure out, all right, should I keep this card? Like, let's say they have a Champa in their hand, so they're thinking like, all right, should I keep the Champa and get the 10k double strike when I attack, or should I give it up and keep something else that, you know, has 20k attack or something? Like, should I keep this battle card with 20k attack and, you know, try to use that? Or should I make my leader 20k? You know, if my leader is 10k, use Champa to make him 20k, and then he's 20k with double strike, which is better than keeping something like this that's 20k without double strike. But either way, they might want a 20k battle card because they might feel that the 20k battle card will be easier to keep on the field because they won't die so easily unless it's by a card effect. What if the 20k has barrier? It's like, all right, well, as 20k is barrier, so it'd be harder to run over it, you know, to kill it with an attack, and because it's 20k, so it'd be easier to combo and keep it alive. Also has barrier, so it can't just be removed by a card effect. So they'll have to think of stuff like that. So based off of that, if you see them discard like a destructive Champa, once you use your discarding effects, you know they're more likely trying to save something big, like a big card that's going to cost a lot to play, but they feel like it's a key card. It could be a card that will let them Union absorb and summon something big, like Cell Chain, right? Like, if you activate these card effects and make your opponent discard, you know, they're more likely not going to get rid of their 3-drop cell, because they want to use the 3-drop cell to go up to Cell Chain, right? So they'll try to keep some of the Android 17s and 18s and the 3-drop cell in their hand because they want to do the Cell Chain. But they'll get rid of everything else they have to get rid of. So things like that. So you can slowly start seeing, you know, what strategy your opponent is playing based off of, one, the cards they're discarding, so you can figure out what their deck is about, depending on what they send in the graveyard. If they're sending a lot of like Saiyans, 3 cost or less Saiyans to the drop area, and their leader is red, more likely they might have what is it called, familiar bonds. So then it's like, oh, okay, I think I know what he's gonna do. Oh, he sent a fearless pan to the drop area from my discarding effects, and his leader is red because he's playing Pan the leader or some red Saiyan leader. It's like, oh, more likely he has familiar bonds. I need to keep an eye on that. Especially if you have cards that can affect your opponent's drop area, you can start removing cards from your opponent's drop area. So that's always useful to have if you have that type of effect, since you're noticing what your opponent is doing. So pay attention to what your opponent discards. What's really cool about this Raditz arrival of the invader is that he lets you look at your opponent's hand and then you decide. So that gives you way more power for you to decide than if they had to decide. Plus, hand knowledge is always useful. Again, you know, that's the whole idea of hand control. You're trying to control what's in their hand. You're trying to decide what they can and can't play, what they will and will not have, right? And then, you know, Broly, as you can see, all these battle cards have, when they come into play, your opponent has to choose to discard. So you're forcing your opponent to be engaged in the game, and you're making sure that every time you do something, they gotta pay attention, because your effects do affect them. Not just the board, not just their life, not just their deck, not just their battle cards. It affects them. And then they have to think, they have to decide, so they have to pay attention. If they're not good at making decisions, that's even better for you. That means they'll probably make a lot of misplays. That's another thing. These types of effects can force your opponent to misplay. Discarding the wrong card. It's like, oh man, I should have discarded that card. I could have used that card. Oh, this, that, and the third. You know, just like I said, if they discard a Champa, that might have been a bad play for them. A really bad play. Because that could have been the deciding factor if they win or not. But, you know, you put them in a position where they had to choose to get rid of it. Or keep it. That factor is a powerful resource for you. It's something you have control over. It's a power that you have beyond just the cards themselves. So that's the important thing. That's the strategy I'm going with this deck specifically, is the ability to cause my opponent to constantly choose. That's why I don't like, I wouldn't put it in this deck, you know, any effects that says my opponent randomly has to choose a card. I want them to have to choose, because I want to predict their thoughts and figure out what's in their hand based off of decisions they make, which is why I want them to choose. If it was random, they don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going on, so I don't gain no knowledge. I don't gain no insight to what my opponent's trying to do, or if my opponent has a good hand or bad hand. I don't know if they have a good hand. I don't know if they have a bad hand. If every time I activate an effect makes them randomly discard. That's why it's always better that you force your opponent to choose, or you choose. Those scenarios will always be better than randomly making your opponent discard. So that's just a small little game theory rant right there on, you know, the importance of choosing versus random. I rather choose, or force my opponent to choose, cards to discard from the hand, as opposed to just randomly discarding cards from the hand. I've never been a fan of randomly discarding, because it's random for you, random for your opponent. I don't want random. I want control. This game already is random, you know, random number generator, right? When you shuffle your deck and you draw, and what your opponent plays, what you play, you know, all these interactions, there's going to be a lot of randomness in it. You want to reduce the randomness. So that's what this deck is supposed to do, is to help you reduce the randomness and have more control. Hand control. Alright. Now, most of these cards are self-explanatory. You play them, you trigger their effects, but most importantly, you got to pay attention to what your opponent's doing, how your opponent's reacting, the stuff that the cards they put into the drop area, and the cards that warp. That's very important, because some of these effects make your opponent warp. Like this one makes them warp. The leader, when he attacks, makes them warp. So that's important. Not everything is going to the drop area. Some cards go to the drop area. Other cards are going to get warped. So you got to pay attention to what is being warped and what is, you know, being dropped, and go from there. Now, I definitely want more effects that warp. So hopefully sooner we get more warp support, right? More cards that I can put in this deck that warp. I'd rather have warping than discarding. Still want it to be choice. My opponent still has to choose, or I choose, you know, which will be better, right? More control. But warping, I'd rather have the cards get warped instead of go to the drop area. Since we have more cards that can grab stuff from the drop area, more battle cards can be played from the drop area. Even negates can be played from the drop area now. So even using well, you can't use Raditz to get rid of a negate because he only does battle cards, but if there was a card that makes it where you get to choose a extra card from your opponent's hand and send it to the drop, you might have a negate that works in the graveyard, you know what I mean? Those do exist. Yeah, small little, I have a video where I play the deck, like do test hands, so you can see like the interactions with certain cards, the leader with the cards and whatnot, and how you would play the deck. The multicolored cards, you always want to play at least one turn one, and then go from there. But there might be a scenario where you'll play a multicolored card when you're able to awaken, and of course you'll untap that multicolored card using your leader's awaken ability to untap that, to put that energy back into active mode. So that's something I like to do, is use that ability when I'm ready to awaken. Like, all right, use his front side ability to look at the top cards of my deck. I already played a multicolored energy this tapped, and then use the leader's ability to awaken. Or I tap some energies to play some cards, and then of course I use the leader's ability to untap one of the energies, so that way hopefully I have more energy. So for example, if I have 3 energies, I use 2 to play something. Like, let's say I play Broly Demonic Origins, then I'll use the leader to awaken, to untap one of my energies, so that way I have 2 energies again. Then I could play another copy of Broly Demonic Origins right afterwards, so that way that's 2 cards my opponent has to drop from their hands. And then if I can overwhelm, then I'll overwhelm into Dark Temptation Toa, and then that's another card they have to drop. And then when I attack with the leader, that's another card now they have to warp. So that's 4 cards you can get rid of off of one turn, off of awakening. Obviously you'll be on your awaken side when you do that, and since you can choose with his awaken side, he has the ability that where you can choose one of your red or green Saiyan cards in the battle area and give it 5,000 power for the duration turn. You can obviously make one of these Brolys a 20k, which is always good. And then of course you want to attack with your weak attackers, your 15ks before you attack with any of your 20ks, and end up if you have energy to double strike, with E Supreme Kai or Champa, obviously you can take advantage of that and combo that off. Of course, we have a 20k double strike over on 4. It's good for surprise attack. When you attack with everything, your opponent sees you're tapped out, sees you're already tacked out, you already attack with your leader, you already attack with other battle cards. They might think they safe, like, oh good, I used up my own hand to protect my last 2 life, I'm good. And then it's like, surprise, overwhelm. So obviously it's the most common way I win is finishing my opponent off with Awakened Warrior Bardock. So obviously that's why he's there. And we got counterplay Vegeta, so it gives you an extra, more counterplay. So you got this counterplay, you got that counterplay, so you can play obviously a little bit of control, not just hand control, but also have a little field control. But also when you play this during your opponent's turn, they have the warper card. So again, warping, really good. You definitely want more warp cards in this deck. Surprising that this card has the effect that your opponent chooses the cards in the hand and then places into the drop area, even though she's a overwhelm card. You think warping would have been the effect she had instead, but oh well. What's cool about her, as opposed to the Relentless Mirror, is the fact that it gives a green or yellow leader 5k boost. So the fact you can play her, your opponent drops a card from the hand, and then you can make the leader 5k stronger. If he's awakened, then he's 20k stronger. He's 20k, and he attacks your opponent, warps a card from the hand. So that's pretty good, weakening your opponent's hand. And you'll make a pretty strong 20k. If you combine him with a Champa or E Supreme Kai, he'll be a 30k double strike. So those are the types of things you can do, obviously. And that'll be the end of the video.